Good afternoon, we're going to get started. Welcome. So this is our second in a series. We're looking at data from the NESI, and we're trying to review the data today on what's called reflective and integrated learning. And mostly what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is just give information. I've got a bunch of slides, we can tell you what's on the slides. Hopefully we will have some Q&A going on. There is an assignment that comes out of this. Yes. It's not like homework, it's we call it a takeaway activity.
Takeaway, there you go. That's good marketing, right there.
Takeaway homework activity.
But there is a Dropbox. All right. Is the microphone at an okay level? All right. Kind of forces me to stay right here, but we'll see. All right, so here we go. What is the NESI? Well, the NESI is the National Survey of Student Engagement. We have participated in this survey 3 times in the past. We will continue to participate in this as appropriate, but what we're trying to do is stage the NESI to have some longitudinal data. So in 2015, when we had students take it, till 2018, when we did it again, the freshmen that were in the 2015 group became the seniors in the 2018 group. So that's our longitudinal tracking of data. We use CCCU schools as our comparator group, rather than national averages. National averages are just a little out of reach for us, so CCCU. So, we're focusing on the seniors because they tell us what's actually going on around here. Now, the concept of integrated and reflective learning. This is a concept in the NESI survey. It is gathered by these 7 question items. So just real quick, reading the slide to you, which is what we all do in our classes, right? Okay. So the first one, the idea of combining ideas from different courses when you complete an assignment. So drawing upon your prior learning. Connecting your learning to societal problems and issues, including diverse perspectives in your discussions and your assignments. Examining the strengths and weaknesses of your position on a topic. Attempting to better understand the view of others and how you can look at the view from the other person's perspective. Learning something that changes the way you see an issue. And then the last one, connecting your learning to previous courses and experience. Some of the items here, they're not like 7 exclusive items. 3 of them overlap each other a little bit, and that'll come out in our discussion. So what we want to do is just walk you through each item, show you the data. We have the 2015 data, we have the 2018 data. It's all about the seniors and how they compare to CCCU averages. So for example, first item, the question was, how often have you completed, or how often have you combined ideas from different courses when completing an assignment? So this is a deliberate activity that students need to know they're doing it in order to answer the question. When the students were freshmen here in 2015, you know, we were actually a little bit above CCCU average. So whatever was going on in that freshman year for those students, they were saying, yeah, about 2/3 of the time, I'm combining ideas from different places and working on my stuff. But notice what happened when those students then became seniors. They're answering the same question again. We went up a blip, but CCCU went up quite a lot. So the differential between the seniors, between ours and the CCCU average, is a significant gap. The question for us is, why does it happen this way? And what could we do to address it? So the idea being, our seniors, hopefully, if they're reflecting across 2, 3, 4 years of being here, can accurately say, well, maybe only 62% of the time are they deliberately, knowingly combining ideas from different courses when they're working on an assignment. Or maybe the CCCU average is, no, we should be doing this 70% of the time. Why are our students only doing it 60% of the time? We need to interpret the data a little bit for ourselves.
Aaron, can I just have one question?
Yes, Jane, go ahead.
Before I ask you before. So it's often, very often, was this a 5-point thing?
It is a 5-point.
So the middle thing was just
The
like
middle is
sometimes
neutral.
or never?
Or I don't know.
You don't know? It was
Yeah.
the middle thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So often
no
and very,
sometimes.
often and very often is the idea of, it's on the positive side, yes, I know that it happens and I do it.
Okay.
We're not showing you the other side, we're just saying, no, I never do it, or I very
Okay.
rarely do it.
Okay.
And there is a middle of, I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is really trying to capture the students who know that it's happening and they're doing it.
Okay.
So how does this relate to us? Well, there are areas around the campus where we can say, here's places in which activity could be happening to help us address this. So for example, one, the CTL, and we have the CTL represented here, all three of them right there, 1, 2, 3. How can they help us? Well, from an academic standpoint, they can help us design something into our courses. Maybe we need help facilitating a new kind of an assignment, finding better materials, maybe doing something in the D2L environment that could work to address this question, so they can assist us there. Curriculum committees, think about what's going on in your curriculum. Maybe this is an issue that your curriculum area would want to get together and say, how can we facilitate this thing going on in our students where they're reflecting and they know that they're pulling from different sources when they're working on assignments. So it's a collaborative process. Second item up for bids, how often have you connected your learning to societal problems and issues? As freshmen, they were about 50% of the time they're saying, yeah, I do that. We did have a little bit of an increase to 56% by the time they were seniors, but our CCCU comparator is still quite a bit higher than that. This is one of the interesting questions because as seniors, they were either in University 401 in that spring semester or they had just completed it in the fall semester. So JB, you were connected to 401 at that point, yes?
Spring of 18?
Yeah, spring of 18.
Yeah.
Not, was it math?
It would
It
have
would have been math. So
been.
math
The
is
topic,
The topic
Richard,
was a
right?
societal problem.
Yeah.
The topic was mass incarceration.
That's what 401 is typically all about, right? A societal issue
Yeah.
or a problem in society that our students are trying to solve in some creative way. Yes?
And this, I think, will be helpful for, at least for me, for understanding the slides going forward. Have we disaggregated data, or is it possible to, between students thinking about gen ed curriculum and in their major?
All right, so this might go to the question you were asking me earlier about,
Okay.
is there a certain ambiguity in the item? Yeah, there is. The question is exactly what you see, nothing more, nothing less. How often does this happen? We don't know if they're thinking only in the current semester or the year or for 4 years. The question doesn't guide them any more broadly than what you see. We would like to think they're being reflective over their entire educational experience,
Yeah.
but we don't know that. Eric?
And students could have been looking at this question and thinking, well, we're doing that in UNIP 401,
Yeah.
but my other classes haven't done it, like, in a way, something like UNIP 401 could push that number down, just because they're doing it so intensively in that
Yeah.
class, that they that becomes the benchmark for doing this, and they think, well, whatever we've done in other classes hasn't met that benchmark.
Right, right. So, I mean, in the first session, Jake Emerson had a really interesting reflection here. Maybe that 56% is just dead accurate. That's what our students are saying. And the rest of the CCCUs, they've got a bunch of loopy students who are inflating their grades. Or our students are saying, well, you know what? As seniors, we're doing it a lot, but over the sum of our education, that only constituted, a moderate amount of everything. So we really got to walk around, what does the number mean? What do we think the students intended to tell us? It's not, oh, look, we're doing badly and let's get better. That's not the override. Yeah, great.
Do we know about the CCCU schools, how often they do NESI? Because I've been places where they do NESI every year.
Yeah.
So the students are, one argument that was brought forth, the students are used to the question, so they're kind of more.
Sure, that's a possibility. I can look up how frequently any individual school does it. Several do it every year. Maybe they've got staff and budgets that'll let them to make changes that fast. That's not very realistic. We don't do it that way. We're on a 3-year cycle so that we can actually talk about the data, figure out how to make an improvement, and then measure it after that. So yeah, maybe schools that are doing it more frequently or just, kind of like grade inflation, who knows? All of those ideas are fair to think about for us. Coming back to that, the issue is the differential between us and our comparator group, assuming that it's a level playing field. Do we look at this and say, you know what, I think our students should be higher. Our students should be more reflective. They should have known that their learning here, 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 and here is connected to a societal problem. My guess is that it's just not quite as obvious to them what we think should be obvious. So it comes back to us as instructors to say, okay, how can I make this more obvious to the student? Ways in which we can address this. Diversity and inclusion programming, the co-curricular and the curricular. What's going on in everywhere on campus that helps students make these connections. So Gen Ed, it's definitely an initiative throughout general ed to be more looking at integrated and reflective learning, whether you want to call it multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. One of those concepts is definitely connected to drawing the ideas from multiple sources, putting them to bear on a societal issue, and of course 401, that's really what it's all about. Anything that is experiential learning, internships, practicums going out, taking mission trips, going to places and engaging with other people is going to change people's perspectives, definitely. And hopefully they will be more exposed to societal issues and they can say, I can do something about that. But then they've got to be able to come back to campus and have a time to reflect upon that so that we know that they're doing it and that they know that they're doing it. Reflecting upon your experiences is a pretty critical learning activity. All right, the next item. How often have you included diverse perspectives in your course discussions and in your assignments? Well, again, there's plenty of opportunities we have for this, and we have been on an initiative, specifically in the last few years. We took what we call cross-cultural courses and we changed the idea to global foundations. We've made diversity a priority, especially in the last few years, and we're continuing to work that out to make it more and more of a priority. But what does it mean, especially when it comes into your curriculum? So this is a really good question. How often do our students say that they consider diverse perspectives, they know that it's happening, and they're engaged in it? Well, as freshmen, we were up around 59%, but then when they became seniors, they're down to 55. A little bit of a decrease for us, a little bit of an increase for CCCU, but the differential there becomes something that we want to pay attention to. Could we be doing it more? Sure we could. I mean, 55% of the time isn't bad, more than half. But does that reflect what we think is going on or should be going on? That's really the question for us. So again, the offices around campus that might have something most relevant to help us here, diversity and inclusion. It's going to be more of the environment that we all need to tap into. Something in your curriculum. I made the comment in the first session, maybe not as rightly as I should have, but to a large degree, for example, in psychology, most of the dominant theories about how people act, operate, and so on, these are Western theories. So the diversity of perspectives, we're not trying in the heart of our curriculum to get outside of Western Hemisphere people to understand psychology and psychological processes. We have a ton of data on how things work, largely in the United States, among predominantly Caucasian people groups. And we don't do much teaching outside that arena, except for one course that we just started here in the last summer, which isn't even a required course in our curriculum yet, but we're getting there. So we took an initiative. I'm going to talk more about that in the end. Service learning operations, general education, again, it's a priority through general ed, how to be a little bit more diverse. The question is going to come down to you in your curriculum then. Do you do some of these things? Are you deliberately including diverse perspectives in your teaching material? Do the students figure that out? Are they aware of it, and can they reflect upon that? Next one. Students, how often do you examine their strengths and weaknesses of their view on a topic or an issue? So the critical self-awareness. Literally, this is slow one type of stuff right here. Critical self-awareness. Our first year students were doing it pretty good, 65%. They were right up there with the CCCU average. We lost a little ground as seniors, whereas CCCU scores went up a good chunk. So the differential there again says, what's going on? Our students are doing it more than 2/3% of the time-ish, or about 2/3. Is that okay? Do we think they should be doing it more? Well, it's our slow number one, critical self-awareness. It's kind of what we all should be doing. But, so again, the question, where is it in our curriculum? How are we deliberately putting it in front of our students to take an opportunity to reflect, to say, wow, I used to know this, now I know this. I used to think this, now I think this. I see where I changed. I see how where I'm currently thinking may have some holes in it. You know, knowing what you don't know is important. So offices, and this is the same slide for the last couple. What are the other offices around campus that can help us do this? Well, it's everybody at this point, everybody. All right, E, students say, how often have you tried to better understand someone else's view by imagining how an issue looks from his or her perspective? So this is getting around to also diversity, it's critical self-awareness. This is just our social values. This is empathy, not sympathy, but it's empathy, all right? Partially also critical self-awareness. As our incoming students, we were a little bit below CCCU average. We made a gain. This is one of the slides where our freshman to senior levels went up. It's just that the CCCU went up at a higher rate than we did. So the differential again. We improved, and we should applaud ourselves for improving. We should applaud our students for improving. So we have a bunch of other data sources that tell us that this item here, this perspective of wanting to understand others, to be sensitive to others, to really try to understand others, is something that is very important in this student group. Appreciating diverse others, appreciating multiple perspectives is something that they highly value. So they're probably seeing it in the curriculum, in their learning experiences. So the question is, could we keep that trend going? Can we facilitate that to a greater degree? Can we be people who teach others to perspective, take, and value, and communicate grace and love and peace to others? That's how I think about it. Who can help us do this? Everybody. Whether it's curricular or co-curricular. The ask of these sessions to the people that do the teaching is, where are you putting this? Could you be putting this more deliberately into a curriculum piece so that you can actually assess this from time to time and then, again, reflect it back to the students that this is the work that they're doing. You have to sometimes tell them, right now I'm asking you to consider other people's perspective and to write something about how are you doing that, and then tell them you just did that. Sometimes we just have to be that deliberate. All right, 2 items left. How have you learned something new that has changed the way you understand an issue or a concept? Many things that our students do have a sequential pattern to them, where they have a little bit of knowledge and they gain some more knowledge and they gain some more knowledge. That's a wonderful opportunity to say, I thought I knew this, now I know this. Or I took that class, or I had that experience and it really woke me up to something, or I changed my perspective on something. We would like to have our students take opportunity to reflect. And then for us to perhaps give them feedback and feedback on the reflectiveness. We didn't have a whole lot of movement, 1 percentage point between the freshmen and when they became seniors. CCCU was higher than us to start with, and they kept going up a little bit. So what do we think is going on here? Is it something that we can be doing in our curriculum? Richard, you had a facial response, so can I pick on you?
Well,
What do you think?
it seems to me that this is the easiest one to address, or another way to look at it is the one we should be thinking about or doing in everything that we do. I don't know, it surprised me that the difference from 2015 to 2018 was so small.
Okay.
The smallest, what surprised me was that of all the other categories, this is the smallest change.
Right. There has been, not in the most recent couple of years, but I think there was a book that was published within the last, decade on the idea that students come to college, but they don't actually learn anything. They get a degree, but they don't actually learn stuff. Some of you are saying, yeah, I heard about that, right?
Academically, they're,
Maybe, okay, that's what it
that's,
is.
yeah.
Well,
It's not just they show up to college and they resist learning anything, but they actually don't learn something that they can say, this is what I learned at the end.
Yeah.
Jane, you were chiming in?
I guess, in one sense, it really bothers me, is it like an issue? I mean, like one or anything? I mean, and I know some of our students come with very strong belief systems,
Sure.
which I think they're gonna maintain, so, at least someone, you would hope even within their strong belief system, they would still change and,
Okay, so we can turn that around. I was talking with John earlier about, there's another survey that we've had in which the question was, to what degree has Greenville University reinforced the ideas that I've always held?
that's interesting, yeah?
That's a terrible idea, because the question is so ambiguous. If we just reinforce what people have already believed, are they learning anything, right? Or we have positions on things, and the students already agreed with us, and so we reinforce it, and that's a good and a positive thing, or it maybe is an indicator of they're not actually learning anything. So there's a certain ambiguity in the question and how it gets interpreted. Again, if we're not being super deliberate sometimes, to get them to reflect, to tell them, you learned this, now you've learned this, contrast and compare here, people. Link that back to the session we did earlier about leveling up, the learning objective. We're always asking them, know stuff, know stuff, know stuff. Remember, identify, but we don't ask them to evaluate or synthesize. We don't get to this. All right, the last, again, same slide, the last slide here. How often have you connected your ideas and experiences from prior courses, prior knowledge? The active process of saying, where I am now, I can trace the history of my thought. I can say I use this information from here and here to what I'm doing right now. As freshmen, wow, they were high. That's the highest percentage that we've had of anything. We were right up there with CCCU. And then our seniors dipped a little bit, whereas our comparator group continued to increase a little bit. So again, what in the world is going on? 3/4 of the time, 76%, our students are saying, yeah, I do that a lot. So, I mean, it's not bad by any means. But our comparator is that much higher. So, we're left with a little bit of conundrum of what in the world does this mean to us? Is there something that we could be doing with that? Richard, you've got that look on your face again.
Well, what do they think? First of all, for seniors to be lower than they were as freshmen, makes me wonder if as seniors they're still comparing it to prior experiences and knowledge that they were comparing it to when they were freshmen. That is stuff from their lives before Greenville. But I don't suppose there's a way to clarify the question.
The question that they saw is exactly what you see there. There was no context around it.
Yeah.
I'll be really interested to see what the data is going to be next time around.
Yep.
Because, at least in terms of 401, our evaluations have gotten specifically, how have your beliefs changed? How have you changed in terms of how you think about things in your disciplines? All sort of focus on that idea of change over time, which is like trying to align with Teresa's idea of making explicit what we're trying to do.
Right, exactly. Anna, you have a comment?
So I have a class that I give the same assessment day one and the end of the class, the same exact questions, and then I make them write a paper on the changes.
Yeah.
And I think that without that really guided exercise, it's actually really difficult for students to articulate how much they've changed and why and in what area, because it's such a gradual thing, and it's You know, if they've changed in these 4 years, then the institution is part of that, but it's not the whole thing, for sure. I mean, their friends and the news media and whatever they're seeing in their, you know, their social media news feed, all these things are affecting them. Their growth and maturity is gonna happen regardless of us, right? So we're hopefully influential, but I think that really for them to be able to answer that well, we almost need like some sort of a character education, interview, piece, assessment, like during freshman orientation, and one attached to the graduation application that said, and then we give them back what they gave us and say, can you please articulate for us a couple of the areas where you noticed your own growth? I think that exercise, I mean, it takes a lot of organization on our part, but it's really difficult for them to articulate, because I don't remember what I thought as a freshman and a senior. And I'm not probably acknowledging my own change, because to say you've changed is admitting that you used to be less intelligent, right? I mean, that's what they're thinking when you're 22. I mean, that's what it sounds like when you're asking a 22-year-old, hey, how have you grown?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Okay, Jane?
I really like the word that you used, which was grown or developed rather than changed. I mean, because I don't know, even personally, have my views changed? Well, yeah, but it's kind of a development change. It's not like I'm flip-flopping around or something. So I like the idea of grown, developed, gotten richer. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
But anyway.
This item specifically, in the psychology program, we do this a little bit. When students are in their senior seminar, we have what we call the portfolio project. Does anybody remember the portfolio project? We still do it for our seniors. They take it as a little bit of a shock and a surprise when we say, now collect up all those things that represented your best works from your entire history here and write a narrative to do that, to connect where you're at, how you track your growth and your development and your change, talk about this assignment, this experience, and weave together this wonderful narrative. The students hate doing it at the moment. But, I mean, years later now, they come back and they say, wow, I hated it at the time, but I continue to reflect on that, and they really value it. So, it's one of those things where we have a model of how to do that, if more people wanted to do that, at least as a senior. But wouldn't it be nice to have students be a little bit reflective, you know, over several stages prior to that, rather than doing it as one big exercise in the end? Let them know that they are on a sequence or a progression or a pathway that you know that they're on, and you're guiding them to be reflective along the way. That's kind of how I would think about that. All right, so that was the end of the data itself. So, what are we going to do about this? So I have an ask of you. It's not a homework assignment, we're calling it a takeaway activity, which then asks you to reflect on your curriculum. We will be sending this survey out to our students again in the spring of 2021. So not too much far away, a year and a half-ish. The hope is that we're going to see some change in our scores, and hopefully the changes will be positive. And at that point, we'll then be able to reflect and say, here are the things that our campus did with the prior information. We instituted some changes, we did this, we did that, and then we measure again. And if we see some positive change, we will pat ourselves on the back and say, look, we did that, we made something happen. Well, we don't know that that's exactly going to work out that way. It'd be nice. We would like to see some growth. We would like to see some change. Hopefully it's positive. But we've just got to try. So the idea is doing some brainstorming. So to guide you into brainstorming, I have this activity. So I know we don't have tons and tons of time left, so I'm just going to lay this out for you, hopefully. In D2L, for example, we have this course. It's called the Nessie Lunch and Learn series. If you were here in the session we did last month, perhaps you got connected to this already. If you haven't connected to this already, it's real simple to do it. You log into D2L, and so you log in and you're just kind of on the D2L homepage. And from the first menu bar up here, you go to Brightspace, and you drop down and you go to Community Registration. And in this list of communities that you can just join, and then it feels like it's a course, it's called the Nessie Lunch and Learn series, and you can just click that. And you don't see that, but you see the NESI lunch and learn. There it is. So in that course, we have populated it with information here from all the sessions. Here's session number 2, and so the slides that I showed, they're in there. This takeaway activity is in there. There is a Dropbox for you to put your takeaway activity into a Dropbox, and there's also a discussion forum, which is just a collaborate with your peers in a discussion forum, bounce some ideas back and forth, talk about what did you learn, how could you be doing something, what ideas, bounce it back and forth. So if you teach an online class, you value students getting into those discussion forums and being active. So you get to be a student and get in the discussion forum and be active. So the takeaway activity, hopefully this will pop up here real nice. All right, so here is the idea. So the paragraph at the beginning there simply notices that the history of CDL, Common Day of Learning, is very much about getting our students to demonstrate to us that they are reflective and integrated, that they have taken in broad perspectives, whether it's diverse perspectives or multidisciplinary perspectives, and they have applied it to a social issue to try to influence and make a change. Exactly what those 7 integrative and reflective learning items are supposed to be about. But in recent years, we've had several times when we've looked at our data and we've thought, wow, shouldn't our seniors be better at this or the other thing? And then we've figured out, maybe it's because we haven't taught them to do this very much or very well. And in the last few semesters, we've had an activity at CDL where I've asked you to reflect and say, how could I be doing something in my curriculum at an earlier stage that would then produce positive benefit for the seniors? So we have that evidence pool. So this is kind of in that same line. So what I'm suggesting to you is that SLOs 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that have perhaps the easiest or most ready opportunity to do some application of this material, to do an examination of your curriculum to find out your connection points. So the A and B here is the ask. We have 6 SLOs, and we have a rubric for each of the SLOs that were created very recently in the last few semesters by the assessment committee and by the Gen Ed committee. So this is a hyperlink there in the slide, or in the document. It takes you to another page in D2L, and the 6 SLO rubrics are there. Similarly, portions of the SLO 1, 2, and 3 rubric were drawn from the AAC&U integrated learning rubric, what we call the value rubrics, valid assessment of learning. So, go to those rubrics, see what's going on. Go to the value rubric, see what in the world is going on. And then your ask is to examine some things in your curriculum and then try to say, you know what, I could benefit from using a rubric that more specifically gets at integrative and reflective learning. So the second page of the worksheet is just a place for you to take some notes. And so I filled it in with an example here from a psychology class. We taught it for the first time this last summer. It's called Cultural Psychology. It fulfills the Global Foundations requirement, and it's a major centric course. So in that class, it's SLO 1. It develops what we call the knowledge base in psychology, and there's a paper in there simply called the final reflection paper, which asks students to do reflective and integrative learning activities. But as I was examining that course for the purposes of doing this, the grading rubric for that assignment doesn't record anything about integration or reflection. It's the only grading rubric that we have applied to that right now is the mechanics of writing a paper. Did you have a thesis? Did you use good paragraphs? Did you develop your ideas? Did you have good grammar and style and APA format? And was it long enough? And then there's just generics. Was the content appropriate to the assignment instructions? And that's the portion of the rubric where I've reflected. I could make portions of that grading rubric more specific to integration and reflection. And so I'm telling myself, I'm going to go through the value rubric for integrative learning and say, oh, I could take that piece and drop it right into my assignment rubric. So I'm grading my assignment and I'm doing an assessment of integrative and reflective learning all at the same time. it's in the class. The class is designed for some of these tasks. The course, the assignment is designed all around integrative and reflective learning. We're just not assessing it that way. So for this course at least, the activity is not to create a new assignment. It's to reconsider the assessment strategy to get at some of the ideas a little bit better. So that's just an example that could come from my area. And so the rest of the worksheet is just here are the prompts for you to look at some of your own courses and to discuss with your colleagues how you might be working this out individually in a course, but perhaps a little bit more programmatically to better build in the deliberate opportunities for your students to be reflective and integrative. Does that make sense? Seem okay? Let's do tomorrow. No, the Dropbox stays open for like, 3 or 4 weeks. So right up until the next session, we do this next month. Questions about that? Or what, does it make sense? Not make sense? What would you like to say? I know we're running out of time, but here we are. Jane?
Same as last time, I feel like these things are happening, but I'm not saying that. And actually, last time I went in there to the class and said, we're actually doing this right now. We're actually like giving them, like, this is what you're doing, and stating that, so.
So it was built into what you were doing, but you just made it more obvious. This is what we're doing right now. Yeah.
So like, this happened today, and this was like exactly in line with what you're talking about. A student, we're reading this passage, and in the passage of like a fiction book, the character is in confirmation class for communion and starts asking all these really tough questions about Genesis. And the student said that they're reading this and they're getting upset. And they're like, why am I getting upset? And so the student pauses from reading and goes, wait, why am I getting upset? I have these same questions, but I was raised in this environment that says that asking these questions is bad.
Okay.
And so I'm getting upset because this is sort of asking the same questions, and I'm unwilling to change or grow or consider these things. I think that's a problem. And in class, my co-teacher, Courtney Bailey Parker, goes, that's slow one. And then we immediately, like literally, we then talk about, like, this is slow one. This is critical self-awareness. You just demonstrated that perfectly.
Boom, exactly. That's exactly it. Making it more obvious.
Yeah.
We're doing it. Let's label it.
And record it.
Let's write it down a little bit better.
Yeah.
And in the big picture of things, all through those NESI slides, you may have noticed HOC criteria, blah, blah, blah. There were a few of those labeled out. So this activity, maybe even these videos, this activity is going to be part of a body of evidence file that will be made available to HOC when they arrive in just a few short weeks. Because they always want to know, how are you using data available to you to make improvements in the student learning experience? Well, NESI is a pool of data that we paid a good chunk of money and we spent a lot of time playing with. Now we're working on it and we're giving it away so that we can figure out how to make improvements from utilizing this data. If we're not going to make improvements utilizing the data, then we're going to quit collecting the data. But this is really rich data and we can do lots of things with it. This is just one of the things that we're attempting to do. So, do these activities, put them into the drop boxes, and then we can draw upon these as an evidence file of data-informed decision-making to improve the curriculum, to improve the student learning experience. And when we remeasure 18 months from now or so, we can see how our efforts paid off. We do have a chunk of time to make improvements. You might even want to say, maybe in an FCAR or an end-of-year assessment report, that you also utilized some NESI data in conjunction with course evaluation data, in conjunction with the data from the actual class performance, and you pulled several things together to schedule an improvement that you, in your area, could be measuring a semester from now rather than 18 months from now. So all of that helps us demonstrate that we are making improvements to our curriculum, because HLC is all about the idea of continuous improvement. We do continuously improve things, and we have to document it more better. And that's technical language for more better. All right. Final thoughts as we close down our time together? Thank you, everybody.